I'm humbled beyond words that I was ever asked to speak on this. I only hope that I can bring God glory. Sorry. And I'm sorry if I do a lot of reading. I know too many of you that when I look out, it's just kind of, it brings me to tears faster. So I'm going to probably look down a lot more than I normally would. So I apologize in advance if I don't make eye contact with everybody. How does the Christian face troubles and sorrow? Where does the child of God turn for strength and comfort when trouble arises or when death occurs, leaving life here on earth shattered? Psalm 46. I'm going to read it real quick. God is our refuge and strength, a very present help in trouble. Therefore we will not fear, though the earth be removed, and though the mountains be carried into the midst of the sea. Though the waters therefore roar and be troubled, though the mountains shake and with the swelling thereof. There is a river, the streams thereof shall make glad the city of God, the holy place of the tabernacles of the Most High. God is in the midst of her, she shall not be moved. God shall help her, and that right early. The heathen raged, the kingdoms were moved. He uttered his voice, the earth melted. The Lord of hosts is with us, the God of Jacob is our refuge. Come, behold the works of the Lord, what desolations he hath made in the earth. He maketh wars to cease unto the end of the earth. He breaketh the bow, and cutteth the spear in sunder. He burneth the chariot in the fire. Be still, and know that I am God. I will be exalted among the heathen. I will be exalted in the earth. The Lord of hosts is with us. The God of Jacob is our refuge. I've heard it said several times, but it really hit home clearer that the blessings in life truly do outweigh our burdens, but the strength of the burdens pulls our vision to focus on them. Troubles and sorrows most assuredly can pull our eyes from the prize if we are not intentionally seeking God and his counsel, if we are not intentionally looking to our Christian friends that we know are faithful, that we know can help us. With the entrance of sin into the world, death, both physical and spiritual, came into this world. Romans 6:23 tells us that the wages of sin is death. Yes, spiritual death is absolutely the key point here, but we need to remember that when sin came, Adam and Eve were removed from the garden and the tree of life. Genesis 2:9 and 3:23. We need to learn how to lean on the Lord in our grief, and we need to learn how to lean on each other and be there for each other in helpful ways, rather than saying cliche phrases that really only make the speaker feel better, or they try to take away the grief, the other person's feelings, because we can't take it away. Maybe ease it a little bit, but we really can't take it away. Whom should the Christian lean on? In 2 Samuel 12, we read of David begging God for the life of his child, fasting and lying on the ground all night. When he realized that the child had passed, he got up, cleaned up, worshiped God, and then ate. It is not easy to remember to put God first when we are hurting, like you do with the loss of a child or a spouse, or when the troubles of life are overwhelming us. But it gets easier if we remember another lesson that David taught us. In Psalm 23, and rather than reading what I've got written here, I'm just going to turn to Psalm 23, and I'm going to kind of, Jerry Martin, when I was talking to him right after Philip passed, we were talking, he says when he needs centering and regrounding, he reads this verse 3 times a day, and he knows it. Most of us have it memorized, right? But he reads it. He reads the words. He lets them meditates on them, and he thinks about Christ as our shepherd. The Lord is our shepherd. The Lord is our shepherd, I shall not want. When you think about how fickle sheep are, They have to have a green pasture that has no parasites, very few bugs or anything in it. The water's got to run just fast enough to not be stagnant, but not too fast because then it scares them off. And they're so fickle. A Shepherd's Look at the 23rd Psalm is a great book for anybody who wants to know more about sheep and the shepherd relationship. But they're very fickle, and it's always blown my mind once I learned how fickle sheep are, that God refers to the people, his people, as sheep. It's like, we pretty fickle. And then you think about these comparisons, you're like, oh, wow. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. The shepherd has to know the pasture that he's leading his flock through. Because if there's a ravine or a ditch, a hole, sheep can get lost in them. They can fall in and not get out. They can get turned over just right, just wrong, break legs, and all kinds of bad things. So the shepherd has to know where he's leading his flock through to help and how to keep them herded together just the right way. Our shepherd knows the right path for us to take. And he guides us if we trust him, if we turn to his word for our guidance. And I say his word primarily because I know plenty of great gospel preachers. We're in the room filled with a lot of preachers' wives. And I know that their husbands teach truth. But men make mistakes. So if we look to his words and we seek his words always, first and foremost, then we can seek the counsel of our friends and stuff like that, then we know that we're on the right path. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me, thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of my enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. As our shepherd, he knows that we will face the death of our loved ones, and eventually our own lives will come to an end. But if we lean on him, we will make it through. He will be able to anoint our heads like royalty in the face of our enemies. No, we won't receive a pretty shiny crown here on earth, and it won't be in front of those people who are taunting or bullying or giving us a hard time because we're religious zealots. Their words, not mine. Been called that before, though. We will be in heaven. We will be with the Godhead in a beautiful place and the rest of the saved. There will be no more tears, no more pain, and this earthly life will surely have been worth it all. My next section in the books is titled Giving Yourself Permission to Cry. Not everybody can cry. Not everybody does cry. Some of us are very emotional criers. We cry when we're happy. We cry when we're sad. We cry with everything. Okay, but I've heard for years that tears were cleansing, and I put that in quotes. And I recently did a little bit of research and found out that actually God did make it where when we cry, the high emotion that we're feeling right then, be it sadness, anger, the hormones that are caused by that emotion are actually being washed out of our system through the tears. And they trigger the release of endorphins that actually make us feel a little better. So tears really are cleansing. They really are healing us. God knew that we would need this, and he gave it to us. So after learning that, I felt a whole lot better about giving myself permission to cry when I needed to cry. The reality is, okay, hang on. I skipped step. We cannot just hole up in our homes and cry day in and day out and feel bad about all of our troubles and sorrows. The reality is that we're still blessed to be on this earth with an opportunity to let our light shine for the Lord, both in the good times and in the bad. The question then becomes, will we? Will we let our light shine? I've been floored by how many people have. I did a ladies' day in September on grief, and I was humbled that they asked me, but I was floored by how many people said, your words really resonated with me. It made me feel like I'm not alone. I'm not alone in this. And I'm here trying to talk about not just grieving the loss of my spouse, but that I realize that I'm not alone in this battle, that life can overwhelm us every time we turn around. There's things in life that we can get overwhelmed with, and we can let them overwhelm us, or we can do like the speaker this morning. I can't even think of his name right now. First speaker this morning, he said something about don't get bogged down with the little things. Don't let yourself get bogged down in those. That will pull us down if we let ourselves get there. During the really difficult times of the day, I have moments where I'm like, okay, you can have 5 minutes to cry. So you can go sit and I set myself a literal timer, and I will be like, you can cry for 5 minutes. If you finish before, then yay. If not, then at 5 minutes, you've got to set the tears aside and go back to focusing on what you have to get done today. I usually am much clearer headed and better equipped to face the rest of my day when I do that. The world acts like crying is a horrible thing, and society in general makes us feel bad for showing emotion, especially sadness and grief. We should just be able to pick up and move forward. I'm finding that being brave enough to cry when you need to cry, being brave enough to show your emotions when you're that hurt, taking the time to let it go and let it out with a cry timer, that takes true strength. That takes true bravery to be able to say, yes, I hurt. I'm weak. It's not going to get me. It's not going to get me down. I'm not going to let it get me down. I'm going to still keep pressing forward for God. But that I'm stronger after I've done it, that I feel better after I've done it. I'm clearer headed and better able to press forward. After Philip's death, I struggled quite a bit with wanting to serve God. Especially there in the beginning. I was mad, not at God and not at Philip. I was angry that we wouldn't get to spoil. We wouldn't get to spoil our grandchild together like we'd always planned. I felt cheated of our 50 plus years together. We had plans, and suddenly they were all ripped away. Then I remember we had plans for eternity together. I remembered that we are here living on this planet for God's glory. And as hard as it is, that if I want that eternity that Philip and I had planned together, and I want to be with God in heaven, I can't let myself fall off the edge into emotional or hormonal no man's land. I've seen it happen. I watched my father-in-law mentally snap and become a shell of the Christian that he was when my mother-in-law passed. I didn't want that for me. I didn't want that for my children. I didn't want that for my friends. I wanted that eternity that we had planned. And it is tempting at times, because it would be easy and it wouldn't be physically as draining to stay the path. But in reality, allowing myself to fall away would be much harder. I wouldn't have any friends in the real world. In the world, all my friends are Christians, and they're all here supporting me. They've supported me all along. There is no peace or comfort on that path, no security spiritually. I have children whom I'm trying to show that God is good always. And while it doesn't feel good right now, it was good for Philip to live the life that he led, shining his light for Christ. A recently widowed friend shared the following quote from a grief class that he attended. Grief is a celebration of a good gift from God through tears. It is a good thing. It is a sign of love, and it is a sign that God brought a blessing into my life that was precious and I want to cherish. And one of the ways that I celebrate the goodness of that gift is through the sadness that I feel. Our grief should be a gift of releasing some of the pain. As sisters, we should be there for our siblings in Christ and let them lean on us. We as Christians should be there to help those still in the world to know a comfort that comes from really knowing God by setting a Christian example for them to see that despite the challenges of this present life, God is still there and He loves us. Our times of trouble and sorrow aren't limited to death and the physical loss of a person. Many of our friends and family are grieving and don't even realize it. They want a dream family. They want a God-designed home and don't know that that's what they want. Not the split home, not the drug or alcohol-riddled one that they're living in now. They're searching for something better, but are often clueless on how to name what they're searching for. Society today says to not follow anyone's rules but your own. But God has given us commandments for our benefit. None of His commandments that He's ever given us have bring us harm. If we're obedient to them, we'll live a healthier, physically better life. So I don't think following our own rules where we can do things that damage ourselves or cause us harm is really that wise. But society today says not to follow anybody else's rules, but He's given us commandments for our benefit, and our marriages and our homes fall under those commandments. When people live in a home that doesn't honor God, they see a difference when they enter one that does. We can be a light to those struggling with the pain of this type of grief. It isn't a gift like we mentioned earlier to the individuals. It's a reminder of what they have never had, but that they see others have. Or maybe it's a reminder of what they expected to have in their life or their marriage, but they didn't manage to experience. Divorce is what I'm referring there if you didn't catch that one. I think Job's wife was in a difficult position and lashed out in her anger. Most of us lash out in the sharpness of our pain at least every once in a while. She had carried all 10 of those children in her body, had given birth to them, had raised them to adulthood or very close to it, and now she lost them all in one day. Their wealth, it wasn't just Job's wealth, it was hers too. They were in this together. She lost everything that Job lost, and then her spouse, the source of strength and comfort to lean upon in difficult times, was struck with physical pain as well as the anguish that they were both already dealing with. She couldn't sit in his arms and cry. He was hurting too bad for her to do that. I appreciate Job's reply, possibly more now than before losing Philip. Shall we expect him to give us nothing but good? Christ came to this earth and lived a perfect, sinless life, but it was not a life of ease. It was one filled with trials to be overcome. We will not grow and become stronger if we never endure and push through the hard times. Helping each other. What time am I supposed to be done at? I don't want to go over. Okay. We don't have to do any of this alone. Job was comforted by his friends for 7 days and 7 nights. Then they opened their mouths. One of Philip's favorite MSOP instructors taught grief seminars for many years. One thing I often heard him mention was that the best thing you can do for someone that's grieving is to shut your mouth and just be there. I listened and tried very hard to follow that advice. I often encourage the bereaved and those struggling with their troubles to cry out, or to talk to me, or just let a little bit of the pain go for that moment. I'm not always physically able to be there with a person, but I can always listen over the phone. The gift of our shoulder, our ears, our time, and our tears can be a wonderful way to begin sharing Christ with someone or helping to strengthen their faith. I think we can all agree Job's friends were not as comforting or helpful once they opened their mouths. Have we ever unintentionally said something to a person struggling that added to their pain or caused them to need to bite their tongue rather than snap at us to let us know that our words were not helpful? I know words that have been said to me that I have said in the past to others that I thought were helpful struck the wrong chord with me, and I've learned to just shut my mouth. So just try to think about it from the other person's perspective before you say something when you're trying to comfort them. Okay. During the first 90 days or so after losing a spouse, a new widow or widower is not clearly thinking about most things. You know that a lot of the hospitals won't let you attend a grief class till you're 90 days out because you're really not clear in your head and you might get angry at the person speaking. That's not true. That's not what. So they're really struggling. I know personally, I feel like the first 90 days I was on the sea that was calm one minute, and it was like the waves were coming over the next, and then we're back to calm, and it's like, well, I don't even know what's going on. If this hour I'm happy, the next hour I'm like drowning. So you're really not clear about most things. And although there are very, very sharp moments of clarity, more often than not, there's this fog that seems to envelop the mind. It takes that individual a little longer to remember even simple things sometimes. They're often too overwhelmed by pain and struggle to remember to do chores and get angry at themselves for not getting things done. I'm sure it's similar for the parent who's lost a child. In a number of the grief books that I've read, one of the big things that help many people, and I've experienced it myself, is openly talking about their loved one that they've lost. And I'm going to say this, it doesn't just apply for loss. Openly being able to talk about whatever your situation is and not feeling judged for it, okay? Everybody makes mistakes, whether it's telling a lie here or getting drunk there or doing something else that you shouldn't have done. We all make mistakes. God doesn't see it as a big sin and a little sin. They're all sins. They all separate us from Him, and we as sisters in Christ need to be there for each other and be there for our worldly friends to be able to offer them a shoulder to cry on without judging them. They may not be right still. Most of them still aren't. But if they're coming to you and they're seeking your counsel, do what you can to give godly counsel, but not come off as, I'm better than you. But in talking about the loved ones without others becoming awkward around them. In one book, a couple who lost their young child seemed drawn to the author of the book and his wife, a preacher, often calling and asking to stop by or visiting them or inviting them to their home. The author decided to ask one day why, just because he was curious. The grieving parents stated that the couple let them freely talk about their daughter. They also called her by name. They shared stories of their own with them about her, and they didn't get awkward or try to change the subject. I found this very helpful for anyone who suffered loss. After losing Philip, Zoe and I were invited to a ladies' retreat in November where some friends attend. One of the friends lost her father at a young age and has very few memories of him. After we ate dinner and were taking a break before starting some of the activities, she asked if we were seeing a counselor or something. And I said, I talk to Jerry when I need somebody to talk to, but no, I'm not really seeing anybody. Why? She said she observed both Zoe and I mentioning Philip in different conversations throughout the evening, and that after her dad had passed, it was like her mom put all the memories of her dad away in a box, and they just never talked about him anymore. And that her mom didn't know how to process and deal with anything herself, and she didn't know how to help her 3 young daughters with losing their dad either. She mentioned that we look like we're on a healthy road to healing, and it felt like this freedom to speak of our dead without fear or judgment was a big step in the right direction. As an adult, she's learned to speak more to others about her loss, and it's helped her to heal in a lot of ways. I told her there was no way on this planet that I would be able to stop talking about him, at least not for now, and that my children always know my door is open if they ever want to talk about him, if nobody else wants to. I've been especially blessed that I have friends, that we had friends that want to share their memories with me of their times, their conversations that I wasn't privy to. Or we all just laugh about the time we all did whatever it was. I have a friend who's a preacher in Longview, whose wife at 54 years died 6 months or so before Philip did. And at a year in, after a year of her passing, he was told by someone, a member there, that, okay, it's been a year, you need to stop being so gloomy and grumpy. Putting a time limit on his grief. I'm thinking 54 years of marriage is just supposed to go in a box in the back of the closet? How on earth? And this was the church secretary on top of it. So not only did they live together, they worked together, they were together all the time. So his whole world just shattered. So there's a good way and a bad way. And I'm just trying to point it out to everybody because I think most of us in here are doing it the good way. But sometimes just the quiet company of a friend is calming to the soul. You can help them with some needed chores while you visit them to help them not feel so overwhelmed. Often, if it was the deceased's chore or the person who left, because it could be a divorce case, if it was their chore or something they did, it can be just overwhelming to even think about doing. That's what he did. That's what she did, and I just can't do that. It's a slap in the face, or it feels like it is, that they're not there anymore. It can just be so hard. Having a friend there can be a great support through it, and offers of a shoulder to cry on as they do the chores for themselves for the first time. Just be there to listen after the funeral's over and the out-of-town guests have all gone home. I would encourage someone to journal. I found that it was very helpful. If you like to write, paint, or draw, do something that will allow them to pour their pain out in a constructive fashion. My daughter said she was planning to write letters to her dad. She didn't, but I did. Currently have 2.5, nearly 3 journals filled with letters to Philip, telling him of my day, the emotions that have overcome me, the good things, the bad. I stopped for a brief period of time because I felt like I was falling into a rut writing the same words every day. But I was encouraged to keep going. Then when I feel overwhelmed, to look at them, to read through them and remember the progress that has been made. Perhaps doing art in a journal isn't going to be as clear as the heart-wrenching words that you wrote at the beginning and the less hurt words. You know, you can tell the emotional change here, but sometimes you can see it in art. Sometimes you can see how dark and hurt it is in art. So, I mean, it doesn't have to be writing letters, but I would encourage you to find a way to track your progress, or encourage them to find a way to track progress. With a journal, you can write down specifics and gauge yourself along the way. What about those grieving a home that isn't God-centered, or the divorcee who had no intention of being in this position ever? We can listen to them and be there for them. I encourage you to listen to them and not join in bashing the parent or the former spouse. Just listen. We're letting them vent. If we join in, it becomes a gossip session and a bash party. And that helpful listening isn't happening. We can encourage them to journal and pour out their pain in word or art as well. I believe that congregations can reach out to the community and potentially offer others help in their times of trouble. Organizing and hosting monthly gatherings is an opportunity to share with others and to lean on each other, and lets each person who attends to know that they are not alone in their pain or struggles. It reminds us God offers all peace and comfort, and to lean on Him. I've heard of widows-only groups, and these ladies will enjoy a meal, each other's company, and do a service project type thing. They sew, or they cook, or they do for others in their community and area. And it doesn't have to just be widows, but It's designed for the widows to know that they can talk and pour out things that maybe someone thinks they understand, but they don't really understand until they're walking in those shoes. You can do that for children who are of homes that aren't together. You can do that for divorcees. All kinds of groups can be meeting and doing things for each other and enjoying the time together, but doing for others. Serving others is really the best thing I can think of, the best way I can think of to get yourself out of the rut and not focus on you and how much you hurt. Because we're not here for us. We're here for Him. And really helping each other to grab onto each other and help gently nudge each other out of the ruts is what I think some of the purpose of these groups would be. When my children were very young, we had a couple of ladies who became widows at our congregation. I started encouraging them to go talk to the ladies just to tell them hello and maybe give them a hug, because we never know how lonely they may be. I really wish I'd done more. But now I know better just how lonely it can be. And this is a new passion for me. We had adopted Granny Yule, and before long, none of my children needed to be reminded to go spend a few short minutes chatting with Granny Yule. Often bringing a friend with them, which was really the highlight, because it wasn't just mine, it was mine and. I should have invited her to the house more often. I should have asked her what we could do to help with more chores. And there are also those who never wanted their spouse to cheat on them, to hurt them, but are now divorced and could use the same hand of friendship as the widow or widower. There are young people who never asked their parents to be alcoholics, drug addicts, thieves, to go to jail, to treat them poorly, to be abusive verbally, physically, that could use a hand of friendship just as much. I always encourage my children to adopt an aunt or uncle or grandma or grandpa. And I encourage us as older women to adopt other daughters, other sons, and to love on them. I've been blessed to work with foundations for several years now. And I've been blessed with a bunch of other daughters as a result, and other sons as well. The Psalms are filled with rich reminders to turn to God in times of struggle and grief. God is our refuge and strength, but we have to choose to seek that shelter. As children of God that have the peace that passes understanding in those difficult situations, we should desire to share that comfort and peace with those still lost in the storms of the devil's snares. God, in His wisdom and foresight, knew that we needed people that we can lean on in these challenging times of our lives, and gave us His church, our spiritual family, Galatians 6:10. Sometimes people have no blood family left to lean on, while others have no association with their biological members of their family for different reasons. But our spiritual family was designed by God to be available to rejoice with them that do rejoice and weep with them that weep. Romans 12:15. Thank you.